Okay, so Terence McKenna's Food of the Gods. Let's get into it. Um, Psychic dictatorship in the USA. Worth reading just for the chapter on aspartame. Right, so for the purposes of review and analysis, we're reading Terence McKenna's Food of the Gods. Copyright Sarah Rosbach, 1984. At some points, there's going to have to be a bit of silence, unfortunately, or fortunately, because obviously it's copyrighted. I don't want to read the whole thing word for word. And I just noticed something in the introduction. In the acknowledgements, I can't find sight nor sound of Sarah Rosbach. It's a page and a half of acknowledgements. Lastly, I want to acknowledge my deep debt to the psychedelic community. The hundreds of people that it has been my privilege to come into contact with during a lifetime spent in the pursuit of even a glimpse of the peacock angel, whatever that is. It is the shamans amongst us, both ancient and modern, those whose eyes have gazed on sights previously unseen by anyone. Well, I thought this was all archaic. It is they who showed the way and who are my inspiration, the psychedelic community. That's from Terence McKenna, or Sarah Roy. From the acknowledgements. I can tell you a thing or two about the psychedelic community. I done acid first time I was 17 years old. If I live another 2 months, that will be 40 years ago. So I know a thing or two about the psychedelic community. And two members of the psychedelic community come to mind. One member of the psychedelic community who I travelled on a plane with to India in 1999. I went to study martial arts, Kalari Payat, in the south of India, and he went off with his other friend to be part of the psychedelic community. He come back 6 months later in a box. Came back in a box because of the some of the activities he was doing when he was part of the psychedelic community, and I had to look into his father's eyes at the funeral. His 65-odd-year-old father, who was looking for answers as to where is my son, what happened. I don't know. Another member of the psychedelic community I knew, who threw herself into a river in East London, weighed down by terracotta pots, who used to go out raving every weekend in 1997. And I'm not trying to diss these two people. I'm just saying there's some not so great things about the psychedelic community. Some members of the psychedelic community get Me Too'd. Okay, introduction. A manifesto for new thought about drugs. A spectre is haunting planetary culture, the spectre of drugs. The definition of human dignity, created by the Renaissance and elaborated into the democratic values of modern Western civilization, seems on the point of dissolving. The major media inform us at high volume that the human capacity for obsessional behaviour and addiction has made a satanic marriage with modern pharmacology, marketing, and high-speed transportation. And let me tell you, I've read that sentence about 10 times, and I haven't got a clue what he's talking about. I've got ideas, but I really don't know. And where does satanic come from? Because Terence McKenna, I thought he didn't like dominator cultures and values. So where's satanic come from in this paragraph, in this sentence? Satanic. Is Terence McKenna a Christian? Because I thought Terence McKenna was like dead against the dominator whitey culture. Just a question. Previously obscure forms of chemical use now freely compete in a largely unregulated global marketplace. Whole governments and nations in the third world are held in thrall by legal and illegal commodities promoting obsessional behaviour. He has a paragraph stating that basically drugs were the creations of governments and intelligence agencies. Interesting. While searching for sources of invisible money and maybe culture creation, I'd just like to add. We are beset by the sad spectacle of drug wars waged by governmental institutions that usually are paralysed by lethargy and inefficiency, or are in transparent collusion with the international drug cartels they are publicly pledged to destroy. From what I infer, what he's saying there is it's all Whitey's fault. No light can penetrate this situation of pandemic drug use, and abuse, unless we undertake a hard-eyed reappraisal of our present situation and an examination of some old, nearly forgotten patterns of drug-related experience and behaviour. The importance of this task cannot be overestimated. Clearly, the self-administration of psychoactive substances, legal and illegal, will be increasingly a part of the future unfolding of global culture. Did you know something, Terence, when you wrote this? Because a lot of this stuff could have been just shut down quite quickly. The importance of this task cannot be overestimated. Clearly, it's just the royal we. Clearly, it's like Tony Blair. Clearly, the self-administration of psychoactive substances, legal and illegal, will be increasingly a part of the future unfolding of global culture. Unless you just took measures to stop it. An agonising reappraisal. Any reappraisal of our use of substances must begin with the notion of habit, quote, a settled tendency or practice, unquote. No reference. It's rather like when you read Terence McKenna, okay, now he does put references in occasionally, and he has a bibliography. But a lot of the time it's like reading, if you read a Kenneth Grant book, he makes statements or quotes and there's no reference, and you're like, oh, where's this from? Have you just made this word up? Where's this from? There's no reference. It's very annoying. Because when I read a quote, I'm like, oh, where's that from? Culture is largely a matter of habit, learned from parents and those around us, and then slowly modified by shifting conditions and inspired innovations. And Terence McKenna, this is the guy who one of his famous quotes is, "Culture is not your friend." To which, like my answer is, Terence McKenna's not your friend. But okay, he doesn't like culture. So is that a thing? Can I take that as like a take that to the bank? Cultures are bad. All cultures are bad, or are cultures good? They just develop organically in their own place of the world, and like you've got many different cultures. Isn't that what we like? I don't know. Anyway, we're getting ahead. Yet, however slow these cultural modifications may seem, when contrasted with the slower than glaciers modification of species and ecosystems, which is Darwinist, remember, culture presents a spectacle of wild and continuous novelty. If nature represents a principle of economy, then culture surely must exemplify the principle of innovation through excess. If nature represents a principle of economy, then culture surely must exemplify the principle of innovation through excess. Well, he's comparing apples and oranges here. Well, he's saying, what I'm inferring is that he's saying that if you believe in um, Darwin, that species take a long time to develop, but culture develops a lot faster. And he's basically inferring that culture isn't static. A culture won't like stop, that it will grow faster and faster and faster through time. A little bit of predictive programming, maybe, in what he's writing here. If you're listening to or reading it the way I'm reading it. When habits consume us, when our devotion to them exceeds the culturally defined norms, we label them as obsessions. Do we? Is it just a thought you've had? You're putting it down like it's a fact. It's just a. You're making a. You just thinking out loud. We feel, and this is another thing Terence McKenna does. It's always we. It's like he's just saying that everything's taken for granted. That what he's writing is just to be taken for granted. We feel in such situations as though the uniquely human dimension of free will has somehow been violated. We can become obsessed with almost anything, with a behaviour pattern such as reading the morning paper or with material objects. The collector, land and property, the empire builder. Maybe he doesn't like you having land and property. Just throwing that out there. Or power over other people, the politician. You see, it's just an observation. The way it's just snuck in there. It's just snuck in there. Yeah, that quote. That land and property. If you have a need or a desire for land and property, you're an empire builder. This is bad. This is wrong. This is what he's saying. It's like dripping it in. While many of us may be collectors, few of us have the opportunity to indulge our obsessions to the point of becoming empire builders or politicians. So he's equating you having a property with you being a politician. Do you see? This is like I said in the other video, the last video, it's people listen to this, they suck it all in, but it's actually very subversive and it's very manipulative. These are completely different things. Is a guy who's got a bit of land, wants to just look after his family, is he an empire builder? Because that's what he's saying here. Correct me if I'm wrong. The obsessions of the ordinary person tend to focus on the here and now, comma. You're just assuming that. How do you know what people are thinking? What people are dreaming about? It's like, it's very manipulative, is what I'm saying, this guy. On the here and now, on the realm of immediate gratification through sex, food and drugs. Well, is that the average person? Like, really? The average person only focuses on the here and now for immediate gratification? I would suggest, that maybe, certainly in my experience, right, in my life, I would be the opinion that certain members of the psychedelic community, that they only focus on the here and now and on the realm of immediate gratification through sex, food and drugs. And he says it's labelled an addiction. Addictions and obsessions are unique to human beings. Yes, ample anecdotal evidence supports the existence of a preference for intoxicated states among elephants, chimpanzees and some butterflies, but as we contrast the linguistic abilities of chimpanzees and dolphins with human speech, we see that these animal behaviours are enormously different from those of humans. Habit, obsession, addiction. These words are signposts along a path of ever decreasing free will. These words are signposts along a path of ever decreasing free will. Denial of the power of free will is implicit in the notion of addiction, and in our culture, addictions are viewed seriously, especially exotic or unfamiliar addictions. In the 19th century, the opium addict was the opium fiend, a description that harkened back to the idea of a demonic possession by a controlling force from without. Oh, what, is that the Satanism you were talking about earlier? To make a different point. In the 20th century, the addict as a person possessed, has been replaced with the notion of addiction as disease. And with the notion of addiction as disease, the role of free will is finally reduced to the vanishing point. After all, we are not responsible for the diseases that we may inherit or develop. He says, today human chemical dependence plays a more conscious role than ever before in the formation and maintenance of cultural values. Today, however, human chemical dependence plays a more conscious role than ever before in the formation and maintenance of cultural values. What are you talking about? The Beatles? People are being pushed into taking drugs? Hey, it's cool, man. Isn't that what, in a roundabout way, in a very flowery, big brain way is what this guy's doing. Since the middle of the 19th century, and with ever greater speed and efficiency, organic chemistry has placed into the hands of researchers, physicians, and ultimately everyone an endless cornucopia of synthetic drugs. Blah, blah, blah. He goes on about drugs. The rise of global information culture has led to the ubiquity of information on the recreational. He talks about people have studied drugs. Western scientists have gone abroad and studied drugs that different cultures take. Designer drugs such as MDMA or ecstasy and anabolic steroids used by athletes and teenagers who stimulate muscle development are harbingers of an era of ever more frequent and effective pharmacological intervention. The notion of regulating on a planetary scale, first hundreds and then thousands of easily produced, highly sought after but illegal synthetic substances, is appalling to anyone who hopes for a more open and less regimented future. An archaic revival. When he talks about archaic, he's just defining something here that he'll be getting into. The archaic refers to the Upper Paleolithic, a period 7 to 10,000 years in the past, immediately preceding the invention and dissemination of agriculture. And this is his, almost like Terence McKenna's golden age, right? The archaic. A period 7 to 10,000 years in the past. And I would suggest, how much do we actually know about that? I've organised the discussion in a roughly chronological order, with the last and most future-oriented sections taking up and recasting the archaic themes of the early chapters. Obviously, we cannot continue to think about drug use in the same old ways. As a global society, where's that come from? As a global society, just drip that one in there, we must find a new guiding image for our culture, one that unifies the aspirations of humanity with the needs of the planet and in the individual. Is any of this sounding familiar? Is this all totally organic? It's just coming from his mind? Analysis of the existential incompleteness within us. Ooh, speak for yourself, mate. Terence, speak for yourself. Or Sarah, whatever your name is. Analysis of the existential incompleteness within us that drives us to form relationships of dependency and addiction with plants and drugs will show that at the dawn of history we lost something precious, the absence of which has made us ill with narcissism. Speak for yourself. Only a recovery of the relationship that we evolved with nature through use of psychoactive plants before the fall into history can offer us a hope of a humane and open-ended future. Well, you know, we're talking about 7 to 10,000 years ago. What are we on? 24 minutes. 7 to 10,000 years ago. I mean, who the fuck knows what was going on then? The relationship that we involved, it was just, he's painting this flowery picture of the past that you just have to take his word for it. Like a Garden of Eden type scenario. Why, as a species, are we so fascinated by altered states of consciousness? Are we? Are we? As a species, let's just look at this, okay? In terms of what I'm remembering from a couple of pages back. Why, as a species, are we so fascinated by altered states of consciousness? Okay. So he's saying that's the state of man. We're fascinated by altered states of consciousness. When a page ago he was saying that people are just, oh, your average boy's just obsessed by his needs, sex and food. Is there a contradiction there, or am I just nitpicking? Were people really fascinated by altered states of consciousness? Really, as a species, were we? Aleister Crowley was, and he wrote a lot about it, and he did all that shit. The Beatles were. We were introduced to this in the 1960s, or maybe you could argue at the turn of the century, the last century, with the Flappers and all that, and the Charleston, opium and all this. But are we, as a species, fascinated by altered states of consciousness? Is that what you see every day when you go out and you walk down the street? Is everybody fascinated by altered states of consciousness? What has been their impact on our aesthetic and spiritual aspirations? Oh, we all have spiritual aspirations now. I thought we were just interested in instant gratification. That's what you said a page ago. What have we lost by denying the legitimacy of each individual's drive to use substances to experience personally the transcendental and the sacred? Each individual's drive to use substances to experience personally the transcendental and the sacred. Is that what each individual has got? Yeah? And are you saying that's the only way? Or are you promoting that? My hope is that answering these questions will force us to confront. You hope to force us to confront something. Bit patriarchal, Terence. My hope is that answering these questions will force us to confront the consequences of denying nature's spiritual dimension. Of seeing nature as nothing more than a resource to be fought over and plundered. So what are you saying? You're saying people just see nature, people deny nature's spiritual dimension. Is that really true? When your average bod goes and looks at a sunset, or goes for a walk in the park in the day off, or is that the average bod denies nature's spiritual dimension? I'm sorry, because a line ago you were talking about everyone wanting to use drugs, and of seeing nature as nothing more than a resource to be fought over and plundered. Informed discussion of these issues will give no comfort to the control obsessed, no comfort to know nothing religious fundamentalism, no comfort to beige fascism of whatever form. I'm guessing when he says informed discussion of these issues means you just read this book and agree with everything that's in it. And again, this religious fundamentalism is hitting on that. And beige fascism, completely vague. But I think what he means is he's talking about whitey. The question of how we as a society and as individuals, or which is it, relate to psychoactive plants in the late 20th century raises a larger question. How, over time, have we been shaped by the shifting alliances that have formed and broken with various members of the vegetable world as we have made our way through the maze of history? The myth of our culture opens in the Garden of Eden with the eating of the fruit of the tree of knowledge. If we do not learn from our past, this story could end with a planet toxified. It already is. It already is toxified, totally toxified. Most of it's up in the sky. And if you try and tell an environmentalist about this, they'll call you a conspiracy theorist. Its forests are memory. Its biological cohesion shattered. Our birth legacy, a weed-choked wasteland. Now let me something's just occurred to me. This quote here. Okay, its forests are memory. Okay, and this is written in 1995. And the planet's forests are going to be a memory. I went to a lecture in 1992 by Jaz Coleman from Killing Joke in Holland Park in London, and he stated then that if we didn't do something, if we didn't do something about the state of the planet, that in the same time since Love Like Blood, the song Love Like Blood by Killing Joke, had been in the charts, which was 1985, he said that if we don't do something in the same time between Love Like Blood being in the charts to now, which is 1992, the planet, all the rainforests, it was going to be dead. The rainforests would be gone. That would have been 1999. We're now in 2024. The rainforests are all still there. Just what occurred to me when I read this line. Its biological cohesion shattered, our birth legacy a weed-choked wasteland. Just gone on a low power mode. If we have overlooked something in our previous attempts to understand our origins and place in nature, are we now in a position to look back and to understand not only our past but our future in an entirely new way? What, reinventing history? If we can recover the lost sense of nature as a living mystery, we can be confident of new perspectives on the cultural adventure that surely must lie ahead. We have the opportunity to move away from the gloomy historical nihilism that characterises the reign of our deeply patriarchal dominator culture. That's Whitey. We are in a position to regain the archaic appreciation of our near symbiotic relationship with psychoactive plants as a wellspring of insight and coordination flowing from the vegetable world to the human world. What did I say about flowery language? The mystery of our own consciousness and powers of self-reflection is somehow linked to this channel of communication with the unseen mind that shamans insist is the spirit of the living world of nature. For shamans and shamanic cultures, exploration of this mystery has always been a credible alternative to living in a confining materialist culture. The shaman's just one or two bottles, like the medicine, the magic man. But the culture's what sustains him. We of the industrial democracies, Whitey, can choose to explore these unfamiliar dimensions now, or we can wait until the advancing destruction of the living planet. We've got to do what he says or we're doomed. A new manifesto. Oh, imagine my shock. Manifesto. Oh, the planet's dying, I don't know what to do. Oh, we need a new manifesto. The time has therefore come in the great natural discourse that is the history of ideas, thoroughly to rethink our fascination with habitual use of psychoactive and physioactive plants. We have to learn from the excesses of the past, especially the 1960s, but we cannot simply advocate just say no any more than we can advocate try it, you'll like it. Oh, really? Well, here we are in 2024, 30 odd years after this book was being written. What's Russell Brand saying? What's Joe Rogan saying? What are all the rest of them saying? Try it, you'll like it. Did you see Beings? Oh, you need to take more. Let's go psychedelic bungee jumping. Let's get on a plane and go and do ayahuasca. Nor can we support a view that wishes to, try it, you'll like it. Oh, you don't want to do it? You don't want to do it? Ah, you square. Nor can we support the view that wishes to divide society into users and non-users. What? Are you fucking shitting me? Are you shitting me? Are you fucking... This is worse than the example I read earlier, which is from the next page. We have to learn from the excesses of the past, especially the 1960s, but we can't simply advocate just say no any more than we can advocate try it, you'll like it. Next sentence. Nor can we support a view that wishes to divide society into users and non-users. Fucking hell. If you can't see the contradiction between them two sentences, then you're blind. The mutation-inducing influence of diet on early humans and the effect of exotic metabolites on the evolution of their neurochemistry and culture is still unstudied territory. How the fuck are you going to study that? How the fuck am I going to study the effect of what some bod ate 10,000 years ago and the effect on his neurochemistry? What the fuck? But it's big-brained, right? It's big-brained. The early hominids' adoption of an omnivorous diet and their discovery of the power of certain plants were decisive factors in moving early humans out of the stream of animal evolution and into the fast-riding tide of language and culture. Oh, well, it seems, lo and behold, that you have, studied. I'm taking this sentence apart. You have studied the exotic metabolites and influence of diet on the neurochemistry and culture. Otherwise, you couldn't have read the following sentence. It doesn't make any sense. He's just totally contradicting himself from one sentence to another. Our remote ancestors discovered that certain plants, when self-administered, suppress appetite, diminish pain, supply bursts of sudden energy, he's talking about a coca plant, confer immunity against pathogens and synergize cognitive activities. Citation needed. These discoveries set us on the long journey to self-reflection. Citation. Once we became tool using omnivores, evolution itself changed from the process of slow modification of our physical form to a rapid definition of cultural forms by the elaboration of rituals, languages, blah blah blah. These immense changes occurred as a result of the synergies between human beings and various plants. How do you know that? How do you know that? An honest appraisal of the impact of plants on the foundations of human institutions would find them to be absolutely primary. How do you know that? I'm not saying he's wrong. How does he know it? Where's the citation? There is no citation. In the future, The application of botanically inspired steady state solutions such as zero population growth. Check out the film Oliver Reed, Zero Population Growth, 1976. Check it out. Just drop that one in there, zero population growth. Hydrogen extraction from seawater. Oh, is this science? This is the science that you so despise when things went wrong, Thomas. And massive recycling programs may help reorganise our societies. Reorganise our societies and planet along more holistic, environmentally aware, neo-archaic lines with the psychedelic community, the wonderful people in the psychedelic community. The suppression of the natural human fascination with altered states of consciousness and the present perilous situation of all life on Earth are intimately and causally connected. Again, I thought the whole idea of the shaman is he was the magic man. He was out there doing his thing. He took the plants. He's shaking the. He's going off, and then he's healing the people. The people are just getting on there. And yet suddenly everyone's got a natural obsession with it. When we suppress access to shamanic ecstasy, again a bit vague like the shamanic gnosis, we close off the refreshing waters of emotion that flow from having a deeply bonded, almost symbiotic relationship with the earth. Oh, lovely, isn't it so poetic? As a consequence, I can't just go down the beach and enjoy the sunset. Oh no, I need to take the fucking shitloads of drugs. If you're a Christian, I'm not a Christian, you're a Christian, you go, oh, isn't God's creation, oh, that's not good enough. Isn't God's creation wonderful? Oh, it's so beautiful. Oh, how did it? No. That's dominator culture. As a consequence, the maladaptive social styles that encourage overpopulation, resource management or mismanagement, and environmental toxification develop and maintain themselves. No culture on earth is as heavily narcoticized as the industrial West. It's Whitey's fault. We pursue a business as usual attitude and surreal atmosphere of mounting crises and irreconcilable contradictions. It's 2 minutes to midnight. We have to do something. We simply have to do something. As a species, we need to acknowledge the depth of our historical dilemma. We will continue to play with half a deck as long as we continue to tolerate cardinals of government and science, that's Whitey, who presume to dictate where human curiosity can legitimately focus its attention and where it cannot. Such restrictions on the human imagination are demeaning and preposterous. The human imagination has got us quite far. Such restrictions on the human imagination are demeaning and preposterous. Now, wasn't he just a few lines ago talking about how plants had introduced all this and they're wonderful and we need to re-engage and take psychoactive substances in order to grow? That's what gives us big brain. The plants give us big brain. All right, 10%. Right, we're going to have to rush through this. Religious use of psychedelic plants is a civil rights issue. I thought you didn't like religion. That's a civil rights issue. You got to hand it to him. He's covering the bases really well. The civil rights issue. I demand to get off it's my right to get off my tits. Its restriction is the repression of a legitimate religious sensibility. In fact, it's not a religious sensibility that is being repressed, but the religious sensibility, an experience of religio, trying to sound clever, based on the plant-human relationships that were in place long before the advent of history. He means written history. Whitey. Our global culture finds itself in danger of succumbing to an Orwellian effort to bludgeon the problem out of existence through military and police terrorism. This is Whitey again, directed towards drug consumers in our own population and drug producers in the third world. Or are people in the third world part of the global culture? And some people think the global culture's Orwellian. Deep-seated cultural biases explain why the Western mind, Whitey, the Western mind turns suddenly anxious and repressive on contemplating drugs. Substance-induced changes in consciousness dramatically reveal that our mental life has physical foundations. Psychoactive drugs thus challenge the Christian assumption of the inviolability of special ontological status of the soul. So, is Terence McKenna saying that the soul doesn't have a special ontological status? Is that what he's saying? Yeah, there is no soul. I can just dissipate into a trillion pieces and float up to glitter cloud. That'll be a much better future for me. Stranger Tractor Glitter Cloud. We will come across this theme of ego and the dominator culture often in this re-examination or rewriting of history. Yeah, of course we will. In fact, the terror the ego feels in contemplating the dissolution of boundaries between self and world not only lies behind the suppression of altered states of consciousness, but more generally explains the suppression of the feminine, the foreign and exotic, and transcendental experiences. Oh, there's this wonderful thing that we're all being stopped from exploring. In the prehistoric post-archaic times of about 5000 to 3000 BC, suppression of partnership society by patriarchal invaders set the stage for suppression of the open-ended experimental investigation of nature carried on by shamans. In highly organised societies, the archaic tradition was replaced by one of dogma, priestcraft, patriarchy, warfare, and eventually rational and scientific or dominator values. So at this point he goes on to what I talked about in the first video, running very low on a battery. Anyway, like if you can't see how manipulative and hypocritical all of this is, I don't know. Anyway, do some more tomorrow. See you later.